Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to the Midweek Takeaway. Today we're joined by Damien Hancox, CEO of SpectrumX, and Dr. Donna Lockhart, Head of Medicines. Welcome both.
Hello, nice to meet
Hi
you.
guys, thanks for having us, guys.
No problem. So I know we've talked in the past with Damien about the merits of spectrumist, etc., but now we'd like to talk about the human trials. Donna, please, can you introduce yourself and give us some background into the clinical program?
Sure. My name's Donna Lockhart. I'm a doctor by background. My job roles over the years, 30 years or more in the industry, have been to support companies to bring their new ideas, develop them as medicines and get them onto the market to benefit patients. So that's the main goal of this program. To answer the question about what is our clinical program about, it's about the first steps to undertake clinical trials with our new medicine, SPX001, as it's catchily called. And we will be doing a study to look at a viral infection, in this case, the flu, starting early next year.
So does that work by presumably having you have half who have a placebo and then you have the other half who have the actual, the take that drug?
That's absolutely right. Yes. So what we will do is we'll have 60 people and half of them, they'll all be deliberately infected with a flu virus that we know causes flu in about 80% of them. So about 80% of them will get infected and start to exhibit symptoms. And then we'll treat half of them with SPX001, and the other half will get a placebo that is nothing more essentially than sugar water. And then the trial will compare how much virus we can grow from the noses and throats of the participants. And we'll then compare the amount of virus in the treated group against the virus in the placebo group. And hopefully we're going to show a really big difference and prove that SPX001 will make a great treatment for infections.
And have you ever come across this hypochlorous acid before in terms of, I know it's prevalent in terms of the white blood cells, I believe, so it's a very natural occurring substance, but have you ever worked with it in your past, in the medicine, in your history?
No, this is the first time we've ever developed it as a medicine. Hypochlorous acid is just a simple chemical. You may have seen it in cleaning products. It's used to clean and sterilize various pieces of equipment in hospitals, but at much higher concentrations that wouldn't be suitable to give to humans into their airways. It would make them cough and choke. Imagine going into an over-chlorinated swimming pool area and the horrible feeling that would give you. Clearly, you wouldn't be able to use that as a medicine. So no, we've never used it as a medicine before, and this will be the first study that has used it in a medicinal form. Our version is going to be given in what's called a nebulizer. So it's a mask with a little reservoir underneath. The air blows through the treatment and makes it into an aerosol, which the patient simply just breathes in and out in the normal way with the mask over their face.
So you've had experience with some pretty big companies and you've been involved with some smaller companies as well. But sort of, I suppose the question is, what on earth are you with SpectrumX for? Why?
Well, I work as an independent consultant now. I don't work just for one company. And the way I choose my clients is always to do with A, how interesting the science is behind their product, and B, how much do I feel they need my help? In the first case, in terms of hypochlorous acid, I was absolutely intrigued when I searched through the literature and started to build a picture of exactly what this ingredient could do if only you could get it stable in a formulation with a low enough concentration that it would do what it needed to do, kill the bugs, but not cause problems in humans breathing it in and out. So it was intriguing for me, and I could see the merit in it. I could see how important it would be to future patients if we're successful. The second part of it is how much do they need my help? Well, I have quite a broad background in the pharmaceutical industry, so I understand everything that goes into making a medicine, not just the clinical bit, but all the other bits. So I felt that a small organisation would value the input and the advice that I would be able to give them, so that I would make a difference and help them with their programme. So that's what I'm here to do.
Okay, great. And Damien, the same question. Why did you choose Donna?
Clearly, obviously, I've got absolutely no experience in the pharmaceutical sector previously. My role as CEO is really to try and build as experienced a team as possible across the various different sectors we're working in. And clearly, Donna's got an incredibly impressive background, with companies like Pfizer and Reckitt Benckiser, and she's able to bring a vision and a lead of the clinical program, which as a skill set as a company we previously didn't have.
Okay, very good. So just to clear this up, I mean, I've suffered from viral pneumonia a couple of times. How would this, once the trials happened and it's a medicine, how would that help me as an individual or anyone as an individual who had respiratory issues?
So most adults get sort of 4 to 6 upper respiratory tract infections a year, viruses caused by various viruses like flu, sometimes COVID now, but there are lots of other viruses that cause what we all call a cold. And the problem is that in certain cases, the bug gets hold in your body. It gets into the deeper tissues, in your case, into your lungs. And often people in that circumstance end up in the hospital. And that's why we hear about the hospitals being overwhelmed in the winter with flu patients, for example. And obviously, we've had the recent pandemic with COVID. So our product is unique in that it is able to kill all sorts of different viruses. So you wouldn't even need to know what sort of virus it was. You would, the minute you felt those sort of symptoms we all know of a common cold, you could start the treatment at your home and get rid of the virus from your nose and your throat and stop it from getting into the lungs. So the idea behind our medicine is prevent patients from getting into hospital and needing antibiotics and all the other treatments that come from being in a hospital setting.
So if this goes through the human trials and it's approved as a medicine, how much of a game changer will this be for GPs, for people not to go further in terms of these things?
I mean, the way medicines regulations work, we probably wouldn't get approval for it to be something that you could buy in the pharmacy like the very first time it was approved, although that's not impossible. But I think what it would be useful for, and the way doctors would use it, is all their high-risk patients, all their older patients, patients with pre-existing lung problems, like people with asthma, chronic bronchitis, people with heart disease, people who are perhaps suffering from cancer and are on drugs that make their immune system not react properly. All these people are very much at risk from that progression from a cold to something that carts them off to hospital. Costs a lot of money, might make them even iller because they might catch some bug in the hospital as well. We've all heard that happening. So I think it would be prescribed in the first instance, probably for that sort of what we call a high-risk group. And then once we've got really good evidence in the marketplace that that's a really beneficial effect, then I think we would be able to get it released so that anybody with a cold could buy it from their pharmacy, have it in stock in the cupboard. And the minute anyone in the family starts getting a cold, they use it. Anyone else in the family uses it to stop themselves from getting a cold. And we can cut the infection off before it spreads around half the family.
If that happens over that period of time, you see that respiratory illnesses will drastically reduce in the UK, for the sake of argument, if that's what we're going to use?
I think the viruses themselves will still be knocking around because, of course, not everybody will access the treatment. Not everybody will use it. So I don't think the viruses will disappear per se. But our hope would obviously be that the number of people who are made really unwell by it or have to take days off work because they don't feel well enough to go to work would stop. And hopefully it will improve people's productivity and overall be of benefit to both the community and to the people that have colds. But that's a long way off. I mean, we're hoping that will be the case. We have to generate the evidence, the data that would support that hypothesis. But if it goes the way we hope it will, absolutely, yes, big impact on the way we manage colds in the community.
Yeah, I mean, how long do you anticipate the trials to take, and bureaucracy is there involved in each one of the processes?
Okay, well, I'll answer the second question first. The bureaucracy is enormous. So we work in a highly regulated environment. You can't just put a medicine on the market. You have to go through a highly regulated series of steps. And the purpose of that, for your listeners, is to make sure that what gets put on the market is made to a good and consistent quality. So it is inside the bottle is what it says it is. The second thing is that it must be effective, obviously, in the place where you claim it to be, and you should have data to demonstrate that. And it needs to be safe to use in the patients who are going to use it. So it takes time to satisfy the regulatory agencies. In our case, first in the UK, the MHRA, and then when we go into bigger trials, we'll move also into Europe, and then we have to satisfy the EMA and the various country authorities where we're going to do the trials. So a lot of bureaucracy that has to go through. The other thing is that because we're treating respiratory infections, there are good times of the year to study that and not so good times of the year. So you can imagine in the Northern Hemisphere, so UK and Europe, best time of the year is winter, because that's when we get all the colds. Not much point doing it in the summertime. Colds aren't quite as common. So we can only kick off trials in like September, October, November each year, and then run through the winter, and then you'll end up sort of in a pause, and then run again the following winter. So it takes a bit of time to accumulate all the patients. So it is going to be, for us, the first study we're hoping to do that we're planning for flu is going to be starting in March next year. Then we should get results from that in the summer months, but we'll already be planning, assuming we're successful, we'll be planning to roll straight into the next study in patients to hit the winter season of 23-24. Hopefully we can get all of that done in one season, because the next study isn't going to be a massive study. It'll be about maybe 200 or 300 patients. And then when that's finished, we have to go and we have proof that it works. Then we have to raise the big bucks to go into what are called the phase 3 trials. So they're the big trials that have probably north of 1,000 people in them. But you need to know that the drug's going to do something before you would spend your money doing that. And all the data you collect helps you to refine and design the trial more accurately. So that's the current plan.
Very good.
Okay, Donna, this drug, in inverted commas, is something that's naturally occurring in our body, but obviously is stable. So how confident you are?
I'm confident, absolutely,
that this will work. You're confident that this is going to have a positive impact on people's systems?
All the evidence that I've seen, and there have been clinical trials done, not with medicines, but with products that are registered and used for other purposes, like nasal washes and cleaning fluids. It's used, for example, to put on burns, clean burns and keep them free from infection. You can imagine burnt tissue is very sensitive. It's very safe to do that with. So the way I look at it is, if you can put it on an open burn to clean it and make it free from infection, then it's going to be well tolerated. And we've got the concentration that's suitable for use in the airways, and we can keep that stable. So yes, I'm confident it will be safe. I've seen some data from South America that seems very positive. Again, not for a medicine, but for something being used kind of like the way we want to use it, but not exactly the same, where they showed very good effects in COVID. So actually giving it in by nebulizer to patients. So I've got plenty of evidence from the public literature that makes me confident that I can go into a clinical trial and expect to achieve good results. But at the end of the day, A clinical trial is an experiment. I always say to people, if you knew the answer to the question, you wouldn't need to do the clinical trial. So we have to be led by the data.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the investor's conundrum, if you like.
I certainly appreciate that, but if I were talking directly to an investor, I would say that compared to some of the other products that I've taken into first stage clinical trials, where we have known absolutely nothing about whether the drug would work, except based on a piece of paper and maybe a few animal studies, there is more clinical data supporting the effect of the ingredient, not specifically our product, because our product is a bit special, but the ingredient itself has been given to humans, and safely so, and had positive effects. So in terms of de-risking, I would say this is as good a de-risked asset as I've come across in a long while. I would have confidence to suggest to an investor that we are going to be successful in our trial next year, and will then be able to move on to another trial, which should also be successful. And ultimately, we will be registering this product sometime in the future. I can't say when, but certainly I'm confident that it will be approved.
Donna, Lockhart and Damien, Hancox, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thanks, guys.
This podcast was brought to you by Roast PR Limited. If you would like to appear on a future episode of The Sunday Roast, please email admin@thesundayroast.net.